So yesterday we talked about Node.js preliminary setup for the TS file. I minimized the TS config and the TS lint. So I copy paste those files here now so that it is easy to copy paste. This is tsconfig.json. Tsconfig.json. So that is the one. So inside that, this is the content. I just shared it in the script. Then tslint.json. This also I
Sir, is
copied
the
now.
screen is visible?
Yeah, I'll just share it. I think I have not shared it. Yeah, it is shared now. Please confirm. So
Yes, sir.
tslint.json. That is all in the same hierarchy, right? So that is also shared now. So these two files, I removed all the commands, everything. Basic bare minimum requirement that is required, I just copied here. This is good enough to start our thing. The strict mode, you can keep it false also if you don't want the declaration to be maintained. You can make the strict to false. Then you will not worry about declarations. Compilation, only if compilation error is there, it will represent that. Otherwise, it doesn't bother. So I just given these two files. Yesterday, these files were very big, so we could not transfer it. So I just made that simplified now. So it is there. So without this, you cannot start the TypeScript mode. So in TypeScript, I'm just taking a quick review on what we have seen yesterday. In TypeScript, first we created a package.json. Underneath package.json, we made whatever is important. This is Angular, sorry. I'm supposed to go to TS server. We created a folder called TS server. Inside this TS server, I close all the things. I close all the things so that there is no ambiguity which we opened, which we have not opened. Okay, I close all. So I close this Angular also. This is right now I'm in Angular. I'm into TS server. This is my TS server. In this TS server is my node backend. This is what the folder we created underneath the project FS project. Using npm init, we initialize the package.json. In package.json, these are all the bare minimum one we added. This also, I think yesterday I copy pasted, if I'm right. So this is bare minimum. We need to have it because we are using Express module. So Express module is part of the Express module is part of the dev dependency. Express module is the one which is a web framework. Anything that we are dealing with web, REST API is a web component. So we are taking the Express module and we want to prepare Node.js TS type, TypeScript, because that is the trend. You cannot say I'm still with the JS. So it is the trend is only TypeScript, because TypeScript is almost equivalent to any of the high level classes like Java or anything. It is almost equivalent to that. So TypeScript is important. To manage the TypeScript in Node.js, we need all these basic things. One, cars is not required. I can remove that cars. It is not required here now. Cars can be removed. Types express is required. I'll just move that to the top. So express is required. Type express is required. Types node is required. PG is required. Types, because we are using the dependencies. So types PG is required. All types are part of dev dependencies. It is nothing to do with major packages. So next is TS loader, TS node. This is the TypeScript loader, TypeScript node, TypeScript node dev, TS lint. All these are required. TypeScript. All these are required. TypeScript version is 4.8.4. That is the version compatible with this Node.js. As we migrate the Node.js, TypeScript also needs to be migrated. So when we migrate Node.js, the version of the Node.js that I use, I can just put here. So node v, I think minus v, node minus v. So version is 16.18.0. For this version of Node.js, this is the TypeScript that is required. When you install the Node.js, at that time, he will compatible things, you will get the information. Accordingly, you can, the TypeScript package you can install. So if I go to the node, the latest version of the node, you can get it from node download. Node download, LTS version is the one which you generally need to use. The LTS version is generally 6 months validation, LTS version. LTS version 64-bit, it is an MSI installer. You can use that is 18.5.15.0 x64 MSI. That is the latest version that is available. So when you download the latest version, that is automatically you can get the other things. So all other packages are generally compatible with that. Since I am using a older version, since my dependency with projects are there, I am not moving to the latest version of the Node.js. So I am keeping all these versions intact. Otherwise, you can just use Express, types Express. All this you can put it in one command also. For example, I just type it in Node in command prompt. Sorry, Notepad. I can give it like this also. So node, say npm install I can use Express, then it will install the latest version. After node, you can put this command also, Express space type Express space type node, all in one single line. You don't have to do multiple installations, all in single line. You can do that also. Don't use comma, no separator. It is only a space as a separator between this. So pg, then types pg, then ts loader. Like this, you can give the command as well. Space is the separator. So ts node, right? So PG, there are dev dependencies, there are direct dependencies. So you can dev dependencies will not get compiled in the actual build. So you have to be very careful which one you want to use, where you want to use. These are all important when you have the build created along with all the dependencies. Then only all these are important. Otherwise, if you are preparing the Node.js on the fly, all these are not an issue. So whenever you have the latest node and put the npm install like this, automatically he will put the required candidate. In the end, you can use the save command, but this save command is not important. By default, it gets saved. If I want to put everything in the dev dependencies, -dev, if I don't do anything, it will automatically go into the dependencies. So dependencies are mainly for packages, that is for the build packages. Dev dependencies is for the developers, that is local, for development purpose. So TypeScript, all these are required for the compilation. Once compilation is over, everything is converted to a JS file only. So you can give this command also. After that, you can prepare the ts config file, and this also I'm putting it underneath. I'm putting underneath our what do you call, questionnaire. I just put it underneath questionnaire. So this command also you can give. So you can copy paste this command also. This is another way of instead of putting it everything in the package.json, always this will install the latest version that is available. So latest version will, if you are going with the latest version, this is the command you can use. This will create the data in the package.json. automatically the -save will create the data in the package.json automatically once that installation is over. So that is the standard that we follow. Either you can follow it if you are already having a project, you can do this way also. So we have done that. Once we have done npm install, we did make sure everything is installed. Once we have done that, I created a API directory. So there are some basic files that we have. Now there are multiple ways I can have a our yesterday aim was we created a routing. Why we created a routing? Because we want to connect the Angular material. From there, the script has to connect to this server because I want to store my register content. I want to store it in my DB. Because of that, I have created the API as a router. See, this router we connected in the app.listen. This is where the router is connected. So this router gets loaded now. So once this router is loaded, the loading in the first thing that will, whenever you start the script, you will start the script with Node.js. So node mon or node space. So index dot node will run only the JS file. Node mon will run JS file or a TS file. It will run both. So node-mon index.ts, I'm executing this. Once I execute this, usually this is called root node. Keep the root node clean. So don't generally give more config files. Right now I have given a lot of config files, etc. But right now avoid all this. Put it underneath one folder. So that is better. I'll move that as well. So I'll just say I create one more folder. I say config as my folder. Inside config, I'll move all these files. I just moved that files inside the config. Right? What is that config? I'll explain. So all for me, it is a reusable component. My Postgres connectivity, I want to connect to the Postgres. So I just given the Postgres PD DB config. I exported this host database name user, but I don't use this because I have another connectivity. I don't want to expose that URL here in the class. That's why I kept a copy. This is the one which you will use. So this is under config.ts file. I'm using the, please remember the name config.ts file. This also I'll put it inside the, this is how Postgres will be connected. Config.ts underneath, I'll use the TS server / config folder underneath config.ts. What content should go inside is I'm just typing. Please use as per your local installation, use the appropriate combination. So in case localhost, if you are in the localhost, host name has to be localhost. If your database is whatever the database name, I'm going to create the database as upskill. Postgres is my Postgres. Password, I've just given XXX, whatever the password you want to give. Default port Postgres runs on 5432, so I just given that port. Maximum allowed connections from this, I'm using 40 connections. That means 40 connections parallelly I can establish to the Postgres through my code. Right? Idle timeout, in case if the connection is taking more time, beyond 30 seconds if it takes, I'm disconnecting the connection so that I'm making it free. So max connections I have given. I have not given any min connections. It will go up to 40 connections. After that, it will go into a queue. Assume that I have opened all the 40 connections. If the connections is not active for 5 minutes, it is 30 seconds, right? For 30 seconds, if the connection is not active, I'm releasing the connections to the Postgres. So I'll establish the connection again. This is the configuration of the Postgres. So this is done. So now that is where I'm keeping all the configurations that I'll do. I'll keep it as a separate candidate, as an export candidate. So this module, I can add it wherever I want. Okay, so that is what I'm not opening the TS file now for time being. So package, then index.ts, we are loading this API file. So I'll go to the API file now. This is getting loaded. This is where we establish the router. So now I'll just say console log my API router is loaded. I just give a command, API router is loaded. So I save this. So now once I execute now, you will get this message. This message, if it comes, that means you have integrated this API module as part of the loading component. If this is not loaded, if you are not getting this message, then you have not done it. For example, I'll just go back to my index.ts. If I don't load this, you will not get that message. For example, I just say Control F+, I go back, I node mon, index.ts, I execute now. Now you can see that console log will not appear, but it says FX project API node server listening on 6000. So up to this you have done, but routing is not going to happen now. For routing to happen, you need to load the router. So now my router is loaded. If you just save this and see my, you can see now console log message as well. API router is loaded. So API router is loaded, then I get the message port connected. Now my load, that means I'm able to load this module into my memory. So now whatever I do here, it becomes effective. So my first job is me establishing a router. This I've done. How to do the method configuration will come to that. My next job is connecting to my database because that is my end part, repository. My last repository, it can be MongoDB, it can be Postgres, it can be Oracle, it can be any database for that matter. Or if you want to use the file system, you can use the file system also. It is all purely your job. Decision is architect has to decide what is his repository that he wants. You can have a multiple repository also. Like for example, if you have a files, you want to go with the file system. If you have a lot of files, uploading of files, etc., go with the file system. The reference of the files, you want to keep it in the database, you can keep it in the database. File system can be a separate repository because the way you manage the file system will be different than the way you manage the Postgres. For Postgres, I establish my config, DB config, my host database. This is the syntax is same. This syntax generally doesn't change, right? You cannot put capital D database. You cannot put capital U for user. You cannot put capital P for. These are all case sensitive. Host, database, user, all this has to be in the same syntax, right? So once you have this, once you configure this, I have created one more called PSQL apm.ts. So in this, I want to load the configuration because I don't want to keep the configuration here. This script also I'll share. So now I just go with / config is my directory. Inside config, I have a config file. So this config I'm using, actually copy is what I'm showing it to you, but actual database connection is inside the config.ts. So I'm loading that same identical, I'm loading that here. Then what I'm trying to do is this connectivity of the database, it will be used in several places. So I made it as a reusable component. So that everywhere I don't have to connect this. I don't have to connect this database. Every place I don't have to connect it, release it, etc. So I made it as a global guide so that anybody can call this function. I made it as an exportable function. So this function, anybody can call from anywhere, and that function is what I am trying to configure. So what is required? So there are multiple ways Postgres can be connected. One, I just establish a connection, close the connection. Establish a connection, close the connection. Establishing a connection and closing the connection is a costly affair from the internet perspective. connection takes few milliseconds to establish a connection. Sometimes it may take even 2 seconds, 1 second, etc. It is very costly. So what we generally do is, as soon as we load it, we establish the connection and keep it that connection in the pool. So this pool will hold all the connections. So I reuse that pool. That means I reuse that connection for the fresh request that I'm getting. I'll reuse the connection so that I don't repeatedly use the connection. So how long I can retain in the pool? I can retain it for 30 seconds because idle timeout, I set it as 30 seconds. Idle time is 30 seconds means what it means is if my pool is not used for 30 seconds, it will release the connection. Then it will create a fresh connection after 30 seconds. If any request comes, it will create a fresh connection. So for connection, I'm using this config file, which I've exported in the exported here. This PD config, I'm using it here. Right, this script also I'll share. These are all standard. There is no change. I have given multiple exceptions handling, etc., to make sure I get a result. I don't want system to crash at any time. If the because in connection, since we are dealing with the third party, there is a possibility network error. Suddenly connection may go off. It's anything can happen. I don't want the script to exception should get created. So I handled multiple exceptions because connection level there can be exceptions, query level there can be exceptions. So all that I need to handle it in such a way my script doesn't fail. Even if it fails, it will give an appropriate return message so that the node doesn't get crashed. Right? So node should not get crashed. So that is why I'm using the PG. In PG, there are two important concepts, pool and pool client. I'm using a pool and pool client because I'm establishing a client and that client will be part of the pool. So I load it as I connect, it will go into the pool. So pool.connect. What there is no maximum limit. The maximum limit, as I know, I kept it as 40. That means I can go up to 40 connections, concurrent connections I can establish with the database. One database, I can parallelly connect to the database 40 individual connections. If I restrict to 5, then it is 5 connections. If I restrict to 2, it is 2 connections. Right? So for a very bigger project, 100 to 200 is more than sufficient, not beyond that. It is generally, and especially in the micro level services, you don't need more than that. No, having said that, so first is I'll copy this here. I'll copy this in my script so that I piece by piece I'll copy it so that you can note it down. These are all standards. I've handled with multiple exception as I said. Now I'm exporting the function. So inside the function, first is I'm connecting the pool client, start, query result. Right? The start is for some other purpose. I'm not using it for timing. So I remove that line here. So this is also I remove it. Actually, I want to check the performance and all. I'm keeping as far as possible. I'm keeping my script very compact so that I can copy paste in one shot. So export function, this is the query, function DB query. This can be called from anybody outside the thing. This is a reusable component. I'm making it as PSQL component. Right? Method name, whatever the method name I want to pass, I can pass it. It's a string name. Query text, query param is the two inputs I'm getting. Because any query, I need a parameter. So parameter, if you feel it is a non-mandatory, I can use a question mark. That means it is a non-mandatory field. Right? Method name is a mandatory field. Query text is a mandatory field. But query param can be a non-mandatory field as well. If you are having it as a non-mandatory, you need to ensure that how you are passing the data. So for example, if I am passing the non-mandatory, I need to ensure query QP Q param equal to, in case if query param there, if in case query param is there, defined, you pass the query param itself. Otherwise, you pass a empty array. So this param, you need to pass it here because I made it as undefined. Since it is a question mark you put, that means user can give, user need not give. If user doesn't give, that means it is undefined. When it is undefined, I cannot pass it as part of the query. Because I'm passing the parameter, it will not expect a parameter to be undefined. So I am ensuring that I'm passing the parameter as an empty array. Empty array because it is an array. Param is an array. Right? What is this param, etc.? I will explain it as we start creating the code. So query param is a very important concept in the PG, Postgres. Any database for that matter, it is not only Postgres. So I'm executing the query. First is what I'm doing is I'm creating a client, global client, creating a query lizard as global because this try catch, I want in all this try catch, I want the result to be returned. So this is the finally, that means this will get always executed. So after try also finally will get executed. After catch also finally will get executed. Always it gets executed. So if I go through the code. So first is I'm establishing the connection. There is a possibility that the connection is giving an error. This is possible when your username or password is wrong, when your database connection string is wrong, right? Any of this situation, your connection string can fail. That means pool.connect can create an exception. So when it creates an exception, I want that to be cached here. So try catch. In that, I'm saying success is false, connection error true, message, I'm giving the message. Whatever the message it is returned by the connection, I'm returning that message here. So try catch, I covered for pool because pool is a candidate which can create an exception. Anything that can create an exception, I need to handle it in the code properly. Otherwise, my problem is very high because my node will get crashed. Please remember, node is a single thread application. What that means, when it is get crashed, everybody fails. So everybody in the node fails if it gets crashed. So you have to be very careful when we are dealing with try catch in node because node is a single thread application. So since it is a single thread application, only one thread will do all the activities, right? That the separate session is required to explain the complete node and other features. We are not getting into that. It is called event based management. So it will put the event in the queue and then it will process that event, etc. So this event can create an exception. I'm ensuring that exception is handled immediately. So I'm first is that is exception. Second, this query also I want to differentiate everything. I can put one try catch, but I want to differentiate between the connection exception and the query exception. So I don't want to both together, I don't want to handle it. So that is why I have another try, and this try, any exception happens in the executing the query because it has to go to the database in some other place. This client.query will take the data to the third party. That party is rejecting it. Then that result is returned here as 12. So this also will create an exception. So when this exception happens, I'm catching it here. I'm saying success false, message is e.message because it is an exception. And I'm not putting a connection error now because I'm differentiating this is nothing but a query error. So query error, I'm giving this. So that also create an exception. So I manage it. This return is not required actually. This return is not required because it is handled by the things. Even if you put it, it doesn't matter. It will return from there itself, right? So it will return that connectivity from this point itself. That is okay, but not required. So query result. So I kept the global variable. So then I have a queue result. That is the return of this query. Queue result dot rows. In case if it is successful, it will come to the 13th line because I'm using a synchronous wait. Await means it is making it synchronous. It is an asynchronous call. I'm making it synchronous. Wait, in case of exception, it will be handled by catch. In case if it is not, it is handled, it will come to the next line. That means successful. I want the rows to be handled and I want row count. Row count is another variable. Query result dot row count. These are all the two things that come up. I will explain it. I will open up the entire thing and then show it to you as well. For time being, I'm not putting any console log. These three components are always important. So you know what happened to the query. Success true, it is my call. I know whether the query is successful or not. In case anywhere else it comes, I'm just making sure success is false. So success is false and return finally returns the data. So as soon as this connection is finished, I'm releasing the connection in the final. That is very, very important. Whether it is the error, whether it is not an error, because query error also I want to release the client. So if I don't connect, I don't have to release the client connection. But if it is a query error, I need to ensure that the connection is released from the database. That means it will go to the pool back. Otherwise, the pool will not have the connection available. So this client.release is very, very important. So this has to happen for whether query error or normal. You need to ensure that the release is happening. Client.release is happening. Without releasing the client, it is very, very difficult. Okay, you need to release the client then and there. So client.release is an immediate activity that needs to be done. So in such cases, I will also don't do the return here. So it is an ambiguous statement. So I don't put the thing. I will release the client and then return my, finally will return the result. So this is a simple script. This script also I'll put it underneath. I have made it as a separate component for a PSQL. So under PSQL dot ts file, the above and below flow to happen, to be coded. Right? So I just put that. I don't know whether full script has come or not. Now finally, client has come. Inside try catch has come. Finally, client. So it has got ended here. So it has got ended here. I'll just put this portion of the code below again. Please make sure you are properly handling that. Okay. The last portion. So the last portion of the code is, in case some other thing happens where it is beyond my scope. So that is also I'm handling on pull on error. This is unhandled situation, worst condition. It should not happen anytime. If it happens, I'm handling it in a unhandled, because for me, my aim is node should not get hanged, because node is a single thread application. If node, any exception happens, node fails. If node fails, entire node goes off, which is very, very risky in the real-time application. So I need to ensure all the precautions I need to take. So that is why in index also, I might have handled unhandled exception. There is a node unhandled exceptions also there. That also I create here. I can create here. That is called process on. Process on unhandled situation. So I can handle that. That I'll handle it as I go, not now. So that means at any cost, I don't want node to fail. That is my aim. So I just save this. So if I save this, it will just compile the code. It will pass the data. So now I want to just establish the database connection. Ensure that we are having the database connected. So for this, what I did is I just given this SQL. Generally, as soon as I'm not made the controller, etc., it should come from the controller model, etc. So just for time being, just for our initial understanding, I want to connect to this function I want to connect to this function, establish I'm able to connect to the DB or not. For that, what I need to do is I want to refer this PSQL in my module API, because this is my module that I've loaded. So in this module, I want to import all imports. I want to keep it in the top. So from slash or double slash. So I have now I kept the PSQL API in the separate place. That also I'll move, because I won't want to keep anything in the thing. I just move this underneath config, because it is all part of the reusable candidates. So I will make it as part of the config file, so that there is no ambiguity there. All reusable candidate I am keeping as part of the, so in that, so slash slash. So now config, inside config, I want to load PSQL ASPM. So in this, which module is I want to load? I want to load only one module expose, that is the Backend DB query. So this is not a class. Please remember, it is not a class. So I'm not using a case sensitive capital. If it is class, I might have used capital letter starting with. Right now I'm using camel case because it's a function. And this function, what I want to do is initialize. Initialize, I'll just call it as asynchronous function. Initialize. So I'm initializing. I'm checking whether I'm able to connect to the database. So let Q text, query text equal to select now. I hope these are all you might have already seen through the Postgres class. I don't have any parameter here because I'm not passing any where condition, or I'm not taking any input. I'm not putting any condition. So I want to call the query. Let result equal to fndb query bracket. You can see the method name appearing. I call it as check db. DB, I'm able to establish the connection or not. What is the query you need to pass? Query text. Is there any parameter? No parameter. It is an optional candidate, so I'm ignoring it. So it will not fail. Now console log result. Console log result. So when I do this, now I call this initialize function in the beginning. So this functional query is, it is an asynchronous component. So since it is an asynchronous component, I need to use await. If I don't use await, the result will be promise. It will not return the data. If I just remove this, if I put here, result is a promise. Promise means it will not have the data with you. Only if I put await, it will have a data. That means the result is done. You can now see the result, either success equal to row count, rows, message, connection error. Success, message, row count, rows, connection error. So this is the possible data that can be returned. Right? These are all possible data that can be returned. So with this now, I just say save it. Now, since I'm loading it, this component, as soon as this component is loaded, it will call the initialize. And as soon as the initialize happens, it will call the database, etc. So the FM PSQL FM is already loaded in the beginning. So automatically it will happen here. So now I'm able to connect to the database or not. You can see it from here. Now you can see here, success is true, row count 1, rows, it is an array. Now 20 something something, it is coming from the database query. I have not created any DB as of now. I will create it in tomorrow's class. I will create the DB, etc. So now I am able to establish the connection. So what if I give a wrong query? I give a wrong query. What is wrong query? So for example, a database I given it as upskill, right? Is upskill database is already there. Otherwise, it will not get connected. I think it is there. Yeah. Okay. Or I'm connecting to the another database. Anyway, I'll leave it for timing. I'll not get into that. So I'll just put some name, select now from. I'm making the query mistake, A, B, C, D, E, F. I know that there is no table in this way. I want to fail the query. So I just say control save yes. Again, it will get executed. Right? Now it will execute. You can see the error. Relation SSC does not exist. So the relation is failing. SS does not exist. Relation does not exist. Because I'm putting the stack also. The error code is this, etc., etc. I got the error. So where it has failed, if you go back to this FSQL, this E catch E, this is where this console log is printing. I don't want this stack now. If I don't print this console log, it will be proper message to you in the UI only, not in the. So now I just saved it again. It is restarting. You will not see the junk that you have seen in the above. You can see now FS project successful message relation. This does not exist. So this is file to whatever DB I am connecting. In that DB, you can see that this table doesn't exist. This is query mistake. This is a query mistake. I can make a connection mistake also. So connection mistake will give a different connection error true will come. But all this query will never fail. It will keep sending the message because node is not crashing now. If I don't put the try catch, node will crash. Your exercises, you try without a node, without a try catch. You try and see how you are able to manage it. So it will crash, it will crash, it will crash. So that means you have to restart the node again and again and again. But in my case, I don't have to restart the node. The node is still alive because it just messages. It doesn't came out of the loop. It is still listening. It is still listening. That means further requests can be handled without any problem. Okay, very important. Understand where to use try catch, under what condition try catch has to be implemented. There can be a script problem, there can be a connection problem, there can be a problem in your JavaScript. When I say script, one is query mistake, another is your thing. For example, I give us select now, but I don't put a T. I'm thinking that it's a valid command because I accidentally forgot to put the T there. That also will fail here. So it will say syntax near or at select. So that syntax. So I want only message. I don't want all the things. So if I want to know which method it has failed, etc., I can put it appropriately. So I can say initialize method failed and result. So I want to put this way. So this also it is fine. So only if it is failed, I want to use this. So in that case, I don't want otherwise. Then if result.success, I want to give a different message, right? I want to give a different message. Why result.success? I just put it any here. Any here. So because I made strict is enabled, because of that it expects that. Else, I want to do this, right? I don't want to do it for a positive case. For positive case, I just want to print result.rows. I just want to print this. I don't want all the component. I just want to print this. I'm not communicating back. I'm just putting it in the console log. You can see now, failed, initialize method failed. If I put the success one, I put a success one, I can get that part of the success. Usually we'll not handle it in this way. We'll handle it in the controller and model. Today our focus was database connectivity. So we established the database. through node, and then we all these queries and all what you have learned it in the Postgres class, that is applicable here. So first is you connect to the database. Database is connected through this. This is the database I am going to connect tomorrow. Okay. So I'll be having a database created for upskill. And then have the basic registration page done, and then I'll connect it accordingly. So this is what I just wanted to cover it today. So we'll come to any questions you are feel to ask. So any questions, please feel free to ask. So of course you can ask in your tool.error. That is also, it is part of, I hope the commands, everything you are able to follow it. All the work, whatever is copied, make sure that you are putting into appropriate code base. Okay. Thank you. At the end, I will commit this entire project for reference purpose. But if I do now, you never practice. That's why I'm not committing the code now. If I do commit, then you all do the copy paste and it will all work. Then you think that you learn the subject. You will learn the subject only if you fail. Otherwise, you never learn the subject. Copy paste will give the confidence. Okay, I have done it, but it will not be long standing. You have to fail several times. Then only the basics will be ready. Anyway, given the copy command here, but you have to try with several combinations to make sure your understanding is correct. So I leave it at that. I thanks all for today's session. Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye.